My father stood 3 feet from me in my own kitchen, his face red as a brick, and screamed the words, "I will never forget. You and that boy of yours are nothing but dead weight in this family." My mother leaned against the counter behind him, arms folded, nodding like she'd rehearsed this exact moment. The irony was so thick I almost choked on it. They were standing in my house, eating my food, sleeping in the guest room I'd furnished with my money, and they had the nerve to call me dead weight. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I looked my father dead in the eye, and in a voice so calm it scared even me, I said, "You have 72 hours to get out of my house. Both of you." The silence that followed could have cracked glass, but to understand how we got here, I need to take you back to the beginning. My name is Mallory Sievert. I'm 32 years old and I work as a senior marketing director in Raleigh, North Carolina. I have a 9-year-old son named Jasper, who wants to be a marine biologist, and a 3-bedroom house with a garden he insists on filling with tomato plants every spring. This life, every inch of it, I built with my own 2 hands. No one gave me a head start. No one held the door open. And the people who should have, my own parents, were the ones who tried hardest to tear it all down. I grew up in a small town outside of Charlotte. Nothing fancy. A split-level house with vinyl siding and a garage my father used as a workshop for projects he never finished. My older brother Mitchell was the center of the universe in our house. 2 years older than me, loud, charming, the kind of guy who could talk his way out of any situation. My parents worshipped him. Every report card, every half-baked plan, every excuse he gave for quitting another job, they ate it up. I was the background noise, the one who got straight A's and nobody mentioned it at dinner. The one who worked at a frozen yogurt shop at 16 to save for college because my parents made it clear they weren't paying for mine. "Mitchell needs the support," my mother said once when I asked why they'd funded his semester at community college but wouldn't help with my AP exam fees. "He's not as naturally gifted as you. You'll figure it out, Mallory. You always do." I figured it out, all right. By the time I turned 17, I had almost $19,000 saved. Birthday money from my grandmother, who passed when I was 15, plus 2 years of paychecks from the yogurt shop and later a part-time job at an insurance office. It was all sitting in a savings account my mother had co-signed when I was 14, because I wasn't old enough to open one alone. That money was my ticket out. I'd calculated it down to the penny. Tuition deposits, a used car, first and last month's rent on a shared apartment near NC State. I had a plan. I had a future. Then one morning in July, the summer before my senior year, I logged into my bank account and the balance read $11.37. I stared at the screen for a full minute, sure there was a glitch. I refreshed the page, $11.37. My hands went numb. I drove home and found my parents in the living room watching a cooking show like it was any other Tuesday. "Where is my money?" I asked, my voice shaking so badly the words barely came out straight. My father didn't even look away from the TV. "We needed it for Mitchell," he said. "He's opening a restaurant. It's a real opportunity this time. We'll pay you back." My mother finally met my eyes and added, "Family helps family, Mallory. Don't be dramatic." Dramatic. $19,000 of my own money, gone overnight, and I was being dramatic. I stood there in the doorway of that living room, and something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like a bone that heals stronger. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I walked upstairs, packed a bag, and called the only person I trusted, my grandmother's sister, my great-aunt Lorraine, who lived in Raleigh. She was 71, sharp as a tack, and she'd always told me I was the only sensible person in my family. "Come stay with me," she said, no questions asked. I drove 3 hours in the dark, with everything I owned in the back seat of a car I'd bought with money they hadn't found yet. Cash I'd hidden in an envelope inside a textbook on my shelf. $800. That was my entire net worth at 18. Mitchell's restaurant lasted 5 months. 5. He blown through my savings, my parents' retirement contributions, and a small business loan that defaulted within a year. Nobody paid me back. Nobody even brought it up. When my mother called me that Thanksgiving, she talked for 20 minutes about how Mitchell was regrouping, and asked if I was eating enough. She didn't mention my money. Not once. I stopped expecting her to. I want to be clear about something because I know what people think when they hear stories like mine. They think, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you sue? Why didn't you scream louder? Here's the truth. I was 18. I didn't know I had legal options. I didn't know a co-signed account meant she could drain it. I didn't have money for a lawyer, and I didn't have parents who would ever admit what they'd done. Fighting them would have cost me years of energy I needed to survive. So I chose survival. I chose forward. Aunt Lorraine let me stay rent-free while I enrolled at NC State. I worked 2 jobs. Mornings at a coffee shop near campus before class, evenings stocking shelves at a home improvement store. I ate a lot of rice and canned soup. I wore the same 3 pairs of jeans until the knees wore through. I studied until my eyes burned because every A felt like a brick in the wall I was building between me and that split-level house in Charlotte. I graduated in 3.5 years with a degree in communications and a GPA that got me into a competitive marketing internship at a tech firm in the Research Triangle. From there, I clawed my way up. Junior copywriter, content strategist, brand manager. Every promotion was proof that I didn't need them. Every raise was a middle finger I never had to say out loud. Aunt Lorraine passed away when I was 26. Pancreatic cancer, fast and merciless. She left me $40,000 in her will. Money I used to put a down payment on my house. Before she died, she held my hand in her hospital room and said, "Don't let them pull you back, Mallory. You got out. Stay out." I promised her I would. I meant it. Somewhere in those years, I met a guy. Warm smile, good job in logistics, said all the right things. We got married when I was 23. Had Jasper when I was 23, almost 24. By 26, I found out he'd been seeing someone from his office for 6 months. I didn't waste time on tears. I told him to leave. He did, and to his credit, he stayed in Jasper's life. He pays child support on time and calls every Wednesday and Sunday. That's enough. Jasper doesn't need a perfect father. He needs a present one, and his dad manages that, even if he couldn't manage being a husband. So there I was at 32, senior marketing director, earning $280,000 a year. A house I owned. A son who made me laugh every single day. A circle of friends who showed up when it mattered. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. Genuinely stable, for the first time in my life. And stability is something you don't take for granted when you've eaten canned soup for dinner 300 nights in a row. My parents re-entered the picture slowly, the way weeds push through concrete. A text here, a call there. My mother started reaching out around 2 years ago, always with the same formula. A thin layer of concern on top. How's Jasper doing in school? Followed by the real ask underneath. Your father's truck broke down and the repair is $4,000. Or Mitchell's between jobs again. Could you send him something to tide him over? I made the mistake of sending money the first time, $3,000 for the truck. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that maybe they changed. They hadn't. The requests kept coming, $5,000 for a medical bill. $8,000 for property taxes, I later found out went straight to another one of Mitchell's ventures, a landscaping company that folded in under a year. Each time I said yes, they came back faster, hungrier. Each time I said yes, they came back faster, hungrier. Each time I said no, my mother's texts turned sharp. You've changed, Mallory. Money made you selfish. Your grandmother would be ashamed. That last one nearly broke me. Aunt Lorraine, ashamed of me? The woman who told me to stay out? I blocked my mother's number for a month after that. It was Jasper who convinced me to unblock it. She's still your mom, he said one night, his voice so sincere it hurt. He didn't know the full story. I hadn't told him yet. He just knew his grandmother called sometimes and that I got quiet afterward. Kids notice everything, even when you think you're hiding it. Then came the call that changed everything. My mother's voice, breathless, almost panicked. Mallory, it's your father. He had a fall, fractured his hip. He's in surgery right now. My stomach dropped despite everything. A fractured hip at 61 isn't nothing. We're in real trouble, she continued. And there it was, the pivot. The house is underwater. Your father took a loan against it for Mitchell's business, and now we owe the bank $190,000. They're talking about foreclosure. We have nowhere to go. $190,000. For another one of Mitchell's failures, I sat on my couch after hanging up, staring at the wall for I don't know how long. Jasper was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Part of me wanted to let them drown. They'd let me drown at 18. They'd watched me pack my bag and drive away in the dark and never once tried to stop me. Why should I care about their house? But another part of me, the part that remembered my father teaching me to change a tire in the driveway, my mother braiding my hair before school, that part wouldn't stop whispering. What if he doesn't make it through surgery? What if this is the last chance to make peace? I called my best friend Tamara the next morning. We'd met at a marketing conference 4 years ago, and she'd become the sister I never had. Blunt, brilliant, no tolerance for nonsense. She also happened to be a certified financial planner. "Do not go down there with your wallet open," she said, her voice like a warning bell. "They've taken enough from you. If you go, go for yourself. Not for them." She was right. She was always right. But I told her I needed to see it for myself, not to save them, but to close the book on something I'd left open for too long. I flew to Charlotte on a Friday morning. My father was recovering at home by then, mobile but slow, using a walker to get around the house. My mother greeted me at the door with a hug that felt rehearsed and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mitchell was conspicuously absent. "He's busy," my mother said when I asked. Of course he was. The house looked worse than I remembered. The gutters sagged. The deckboards were warped and splitting. The front yard was more dirt than grass. Inside was worse. Stacks of unopened mail on the kitchen counter. A notice from the bank. Red letters. Final warning. My father sat in a recliner in the living room, thinner than the last time I'd seen him. He looked up when I walked in but didn't say hello. "Just took you long enough." I stayed 2 days. In those 2 days, I learned the full scope of the damage. The $190,000 was just the mortgage. There were credit card debts, medical bills from my father's surgery, back taxes. Total? Nearly $300,000. And Mitchell, their golden child, their sure bet, was nowhere to be found. He'd moved to Asheville to start fresh with a girl he'd met online. He hadn't sent them a dime. On the second night, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table and made her pitch. "Move us in with you," she said, her voice soft, almost sweet. "Just until we get back on our feet. 6 months, maybe a year. You've got the room. And your father needs help recovering." I wanted to say no. Every instinct Tamara had sharpened in me screamed no. But I looked at my father, struggling to stand from his chair, and I heard Aunt Lorraine's voice in my head mixed with Jasper's. "She's still your mom. Don't let them pull you back." I said yes. 6 months. Clear boundaries. No money beyond covering their food. And absolutely no involving Mitchell. They moved in 3 weeks later. The first month was fine. Quiet, almost pleasant. My mother cooked dinners. My father watched baseball with Jasper in the living room. For a few fragile weeks, it almost felt like the family I'd always wanted. Jasper loved having grandparents around. He'd show my father his school projects, drag my mother into the garden to see the tomatoes. I watched them interact and felt this ache in my chest, a longing for something that was probably never real to begin with. The cracks showed up around week 5. My mother started making comments about the house. "This furniture is nice, Mallory. Must have cost a fortune. You really need all this space for just 2 people? I saw your car payment on the counter. That's a lot of money for a vehicle." She was cataloging, tallying up my worth. I recognized the pattern because it was the same thing she'd done before she took my savings. First, she measured. Then she reached. By month 3, the requests started again. "Your father needs a specialist. The copay is $800. Mitchell called. He's in trouble. Could you send him just $2,000? The bank wants a payment plan on the house or they're selling it. Can you cover the first installment?" I said no to each one. No to the specialist, which I later found out was a chiropractor my father didn't need. No to Mitchell, who I hadn't spoken to in years and planned to keep it that way. No to the bank payment, because that house was no longer my problem. Each no made the air in my house thicker. My mother's smiles disappeared. My father stopped watching baseball with Jasper. They retreated to the guest room, whispering behind closed doors. I could feel something building, the way you feel a storm before the sky turns green. It happened at a cookout, 4th of July weekend. I'd invited Tamara and a few neighbors over for burgers and fireworks. Jasper was running around the yard with the neighbors' kids, sparklers in hand, laughing the way only kids can laugh, like joy is the easiest thing in the world. I was at the grill, flipping burgers, feeling something close to peace for the first time in months. My father limped out onto the deck, a beer in his hand. He watched me for a minute, his expression sour, like the sight of me enjoying my own life personally offended him. Then he said it, loud enough for everyone to hear. Must be nice, living off other people's sacrifices. You and that boy freeloading through life while your family drowns. The yard went quiet. Tamara set down her drink. My neighbor's wife looked at her shoes. Jasper, standing 10 feet away with a sparkler frozen in the air, stared at his grandfather with those wide, confused eyes. My mother stepped out behind my father, and I waited. Waited for her to correct him, to say something, anything. Instead, she put her hand on his shoulder and said, "He's right, Mallory. We gave you everything and this is how you repay us?" Everything. They gave me everything. The woman who drained my bank account at 18. The man who never once apologized. They gave me everything. I set the spatula down. I walked up to my father, close enough to smell the beer on his breath, and I said it so quietly only he and my mother could hear. You are living in my house. Eating food I paid for. Sleeping in a bed I bought. You have 72 hours to find somewhere else to be, and if you ever speak about my son like that again, it won't be a conversation. It'll be a lawyer. I walked back to the grill. I flicked the burgers. My hands were shaking, but my voice hadn't cracked. And that was all that mattered. My father opened his mouth, closed it, and went inside. My mother followed without a word. Tamara caught my eye across the yard and gave me a single nod. That nod held more love than my parents had shown me in 32 years. They didn't leave in 72 hours. Of course they didn't. My mother launched a campaign. She posted on Facebook a long, tearful screed about her ungrateful daughter kicking her injured father out of the house. She tagged relatives I hadn't spoken to in a decade. She called my father's sister, my aunt in Greensboro, and spun a version of events where I was the villain hoarding money while my poor parents suffered. My phone blew up. Cousins I barely remembered sent me messages calling me cold. An uncle I'd met twice told me I should be ashamed. Mitchell predictably resurfaced with a text. Real classy, Mallory, kicking out a man who can barely walk. I almost laughed. Mitchell, who hadn't sent them $1. Mitchell, who'd burned through my savings, their retirement, and a 6-figure loan without producing a single thing of value. He had the nerve. But I didn't respond to any of them. Not Mitchell, not the cousins, not the uncle. Responding meant engaging, and engaging meant losing. Instead, I called a lawyer. Tamara had already connected me with one, a real estate attorney named Joanna Merritt who specialized in property disputes. Joanna was direct and efficient. She reviewed my situation, confirmed my parents had no legal claim to my house, and drafted a formal eviction notice giving them 30 days, which was more than the law required. I also asked Joanna about the house in Charlotte, the one the bank was foreclosing on. You could buy it, she said. The bank wants to offload it. You could probably get it for $160,000, maybe less. The idea settled into me like a key turning in a lock. Not revenge. Something sharper, control. For the first time, I'd hold the thing they were desperate to keep, and they'd have to deal with me on my terms. Tamara helped me run the numbers. Between my savings, investments, and a manageable loan, I could swing it. Are you sure about this? She asked, her eyes searching mine. This isn't about making them pay. It's about never letting them hold anything over me again, I said. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Then let's do it. Within 2 weeks, the deal was done. I bought my parents' house from the bank for $154,000. I owned it outright. Joanna had the deed transferred to my name and drafted a lease agreement. If my parents wanted to live in their old house, they could, as tenants, paying me $1,200 a month in rent with a repayment plan for the remaining debt they owed from their defaulted mortgage. Miss a payment, and they'd face eviction. Every dollar of rent above my loan payment would go into Jasper's college fund. The math was clean. The symbolism was louder. I didn't tell them right away. I let the eviction notice from my own house do its work first. My mother raged. She called me 6 times in one day. She stood in the hallway outside my bedroom at midnight and said through the door, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." I put in earplugs and went to sleep. My father said nothing at all, which was somehow worse. On day 28, Joanna sent them the formal paperwork, a packet that included the eviction confirmation for my house, the deed showing I now owned their Charlotte house, and the lease terms. I wasn't there when they opened it. I didn't need to be. Joanna told me later that my mother called her office screaming, demanding to know how I could do this. Joanna's response was professional and brief. "Miss Sievert is within her legal rights. I suggest you consult your own attorney." Mitchell called that night. For the first time in years, his voice wasn't smug. It was small. "You bought the house?" he asked. "I did." Silence. "Then that's cold, Mallory." I almost felt something. Almost. "You spent my college savings on a restaurant that lasted 5 months, I said. "You burned through Mom and Dad's retirement on a landscaping company that folded in 10. You moved to Asheville and didn't send them a single check while I was the one fielding their calls, their guilt trips, their demands. You don't get to call me cold." He hung up. I set the phone down and made Jasper's lunch for the next day. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, a juice box. Normal things. Grounding things. They moved out of my house on day 30. My mother left the guest room spotless, which surprised me, and a note on the kitchen counter. "You'll regret this." 2 words. No signature. I threw it in the trash. They moved back to the Charlotte house, now my house under the lease terms. My father signed it. My mother refused to sign for 3 days before Joanna informed her the alternative was homelessness. She signed. The first month's rent arrived on time. So did the second. By the 3rd month, I heard through a cousin that my father had taken a part-time bookkeeping job, and my mother was working at a craft store. Mitchell was still in Asheville, still chasing some idea, still contributing nothing. The Facebook post came down after Joanna sent a cease and desist letter with a defamation clause that made my mother's eyes water, according to the cousin. The relatives who'd called me cold went quiet. Funny how that works. When you stop being the easy target, people suddenly run out of opinions. Jasper asked about his grandparents about a month after they left. We were sitting on the back porch watching fireflies blink across the yard, the way they do in Carolina summers when the air is thick and warm and smells like fresh-cut grass. "Are Grandma and Grandpa coming back?" he asked, poking at a firefly that had landed on his knee. I chose my words carefully. "They're in their own house now," I said. "Sometimes people need space to figure things out. But you and me, we're good. We've always been good." He thought about that for a second, the way 9-year-olds think about big things, with total seriousness and then sudden acceptance. "Okay," he said. "Can we plant pumpkins this fall?" "Yeah, buddy. We can plant pumpkins." That was enough. His trust in me, his ability to move on without carrying the weight of adult problems, that was worth more than any apology I'd never receive. Tamara and I sat on that same porch the following weekend, drinking wine while Jasper slept upstairs. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it. Really thought. "Like I put down something heavy," I said. "Something I've been carrying so long I forgot it wasn't part of me." She raised her glass. "To putting it down." We clinked glasses and the sound hung in the night air like a small, perfect bell. I threw myself into work after that, not to escape, but because I could finally focus without the constant drain of my parents' demands pulling at the edges of my concentration. I took on a new client, mentored 2 junior marketers on my team, started writing a blog about financial independence for single moms. It wasn't therapy, but it was close. Jasper noticed the change. "You smile more now, Mom," he said one morning over cereal. I almost cried into my coffee. My ex-husband called around that time, his usual Wednesday check-in. "Heard about your parents," he said, careful and neutral. "You okay?" "Better than okay," I said, and I meant it. He paused, then, "Jasper's lucky to have you, Mallory. I mean that." It wasn't much, but it was honest. For Jasper's sake, I kept that door open. A kid needs every good thing he can get. The Charlotte house is still rented to my parents. They pay on time mostly. There was one late payment in month 4. Joanna sent a notice. It hasn't happened again. I don't call them. They don't call me. There's a strange peace in that silence. Not warm, not healing, but clean. Like a wound that's finally closed, even if the scar is still there. I drive by Aunt Lorraine's old place sometimes when I'm in Raleigh. It's been sold and renovated. A young family lives there now. Bikes in the driveway, a swing set in the back. I think she'd like that. I think she'd like what I've done. Not the house, not the money, but the standing up, the saying enough. She told me not to let them pull me back, and for a while I almost did. But almost doesn't count. Last week, Jasper came home from school with a project about his family tree. He'd drawn it on a big sheet of poster board, branches and leaves and little stick figures. At the top, where most kids put grandparents and aunts and uncles stretching out in every direction, Jasper had drawn 2 figures, me and him. Next to us, he'd added Tamara, and his dad, and his friend Ezra from next door. Underneath, in his messy handwriting, he'd written, "Family is the people who show up." I stared at that poster board for a long time. He hadn't learned that phrase from me. I'd never said it out loud. He'd learned it from watching, from paying attention to who was there on his birthdays, who helped him with homework, who sat in the bleachers at his swim meets. He'd figured out on his own what took me 32 years and a whole lot of heartbreak to understand. I hung that poster on the refrigerator, right at eye level, where I see it every morning when I make coffee. Some lessons you learn from books, some you learn from pain, and some, the best ones, you learn from a 9-year-old kid with a marker and a piece of poster board who already knows what matters.